Welcome to this edition of Cornwall Art Hive's In the Artist's Studio. We are here today with Farrah Douglas, founder of Belle Penny, who is a fashion designer, has training at the fashion design school in Ottawa known as Richard Robinson, and has a history in her family of fashion design, following in her father's footsteps. Farrah, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for having us in your beautiful studio.
If you could call it a studio, yeah.
It is a studio. You're doing art here. It is a
Yeah.
valid place to call a studio.
Okay.
Farrah, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your artistic discipline, fashion design?
Well, so as I was saying before, I've pretty much been sewing my whole life. My dad was a designer. He never actually taught me how to do it though, so I kind of would just learn from watching him in the corner or whatnot. When he would go to work, I would like sneak on his machines and break the needles. So it was mostly just the realm of all of that really like intrigued me into it, and I think it was kind of inevitable that I was gonna get into it, although I'm one of 4 siblings and nobody else sews, so who knows, right?
Right. You said he was working out of his basement, so this was something you were steeped in from a very young age.
Yeah, I remember in the basement was where like the majority of the industrial like big machines were, and then we had like another bedroom that my family had made, which kind of became like his studio, I guess, if you will. Like there was mannequins and all the fabric in there. And sometimes we would go to work with him on Saturdays, and we would always come home with like bags of clothes, like sample clothes. So yeah, we were definitely like in that environment growing up as kids. Yeah.
So he had a separate business as well. This was the stuff that he had at home was his personal stuff.
He worked. His main job was a pattern maker. So he would work for companies. Like he's worked for Levi's, like Lee, like The Gap. Like growing up, like he would work for different industries or like whatnot. And they would hire him to do like pattern making. So he would do essentially, I don't know what they call it technically, but he would do knockoffs. Like, so they would hire him to like make a pattern off of something else, and like he would do freelance like most of the time, majority of the time. But anyways, yeah, so that's what he would do. So his main like job at his companies was pattern making, because that sadly is like where the money really is at in the industry, unless you have your own business.
It takes an awful lot of knowledge to make a pattern, especially to produce something that you're already seeing on someone.
Yeah, exactly.
To work it backwards, to reverse engineer it is a skill.
Exactly, yeah. So
I did this with security graphics, so I understand.
Yeah.
Reverse engineering is not easy. I was going to ask how and when you realized this was something you wanted to pursue. I realized you were steeped in it as a child, but at what point did you say, I want to do this for a living? Or is it something that was a hobby and became a living?
Oh, it's like, it's always been this thing like in the background with me, like pulling me back, and I've always had the hardest time like balancing sewing. It's like this all or nothing kind of thing, and like I'm almost 42 now, and I think this is the first time in my life where I've actually struck this type of balance. So when I was younger, when I first applied to fashion design school, I was like 19, 20, I got accepted. And then I put it off because I was working in a bar and I was making like a ton of tips and I didn't want to go to school. So then I put it off. And it was only when I was pregnant with my first daughter that I finally said, okay, I'm going to go. So I was literally traveling back and forth to Ottawa every day, like pregnant with her. And I had her 3 weeks later, I went back to school. When I was done with that, that's when like the reality hit me, like, crap, like now I know why my dad did pattern making, because like you can't make a living really, like it's hard to make a living like sewing, and that's what I really love. Like I don't care for the pattern making, I don't care for like the sketching, you do it because you have to, but I love to sew. So I gave it up for a while, and then I had my twins, and my son has special needs, so I definitely couldn't sew then. So then I got working into the healthcare field. So I really gave up sewing for like a long time. I would sew here and there for like myself, you know, but the thought of doing it as a business was like totally off the table. From healthcare, I kind of transitioned into owning a salon in a nursing home, which I really loved doing because I felt like it was combining a little bit of like that fashion part that I loved, and I had really developed like a love for working with people with special needs and seniors. So I owned a salon in a nursing home, and then COVID hit and I lost the business. And so then I was faced with like, okay, I've got my 3 kids home. They're all teenagers, but my son Ty has special needs. So even though he's a teenager, like he requires me home, you know, and I didn't know what to do to make money. So I started sewing again, kind of like, you know, when everybody was doing like the making bread and then this and that in the beginning of COVID, you know, so I just started sewing again and I started posting stuff online. And eventually everybody was like, why don't you do this? Like, you know, for like an actual business. So I actually launched a website 2 years ago. But it didn't really like take off. It's only in the last few months that things really just started to skyrocket. And so here I am now again, going back to the thing that I started doing when I was younger. So it's been this like full circle sort of.
It's always been in the back of your mind, or you kind of put it behind you and said, that's it?
Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like sewing is like this love-hate part of me. It's like this attached twin to me that like I can't get rid of even if I want to. It's like I've never known how to like balance doing it and then just packing it up and saying, okay, it's time to put it away. Like when I was younger, when I would sew, I would stay up till like 4 a.m. working on something. And so like I didn't know how to like not completely absorb myself in it. And then on the flip side, I didn't know how to like, when people would come to me and ask me to make something, if it was something I didn't like, I didn't perform the same. It was almost like I had this like writer's block, and I was like, why can't I produce the same when it's not my choice of what I want to make, you know? And finally I've like hit this sweet spot where I'm doing custom orders and I'm making things that I think are beautiful and that I love, and each piece is unique and customized to somebody, and people actually want to buy them. So it's great.
Yeah, that's magic.
Yeah.
You're doing what you love
exactly,
the way you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some experience with that myself. Doing projects that I didn't originate was always more difficult than doing projects that came from me.
Exactly. Yeah.
The passion that you invest is a very different dynamic, but you've got to make money, right?
Exactly.
You got to do what you got to do. So you mentioned growing up in a fashion designer's home. Was that in this area or was that elsewhere?
No, so that was like, we were born in Quebec, in Laval, in that area. And so when we grew up, it was like that area with my dad. My parents divorced when I was young, and I moved to LA with my dad when I was 13.
Wow.
So really my biggest memory was being out in LA and going to like the factories with him there where he worked, and that's when we really got to experience, you know, like getting the sample clothes and all of that, and being like on the grounds of like the workshop where like, you know, people were sewing and everything. But even then I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. My dad always like deterred us from that business, mostly like the modeling side of it. Just because, you know, he's seen it firsthand, and I don't think I expressed at that time that I wanted to sew. It wasn't really until I came back to Canada when I was like 18, 19, and I went to Richard Robinson that I really started to kind of make it my own, like, and really find my space in there when I got older, yeah.
Well, it's quite remarkable that you're able to do the design aspect as well as the manufacture aspect at such a young age, to be frank. Usually that's something people aspire to. They either make it when they're very young,
yeah,
or they make it when they're older and seasoned and well established and well connected. Are your ties to the LA area helping your business at all?
You know,
you mentioned doing something from California.
Yeah, Well, I definitely think like my influence of the styles I like are the companies that I tend to kind of pull from and that I personally shop from myself are California-based companies. Like the very bohemian kind of like vintage, like Laura Ashley, Gun Sacks, like that kind of style.
I'm nodding my head, but I have no idea what
Yeah,
you're talking
they're
about.
just like vintage styles and like but the main reason why I like and I personally will put my own money into those companies is because they're ethical, which is my big thing. Like, so umbrella, like the umbrella over everything is that I'm trying to like stop the fast fashion kind of industry from thriving, you know. So even before I kind of started out doing this, or my intention was to sell for other people, I kind of amped up sewing for myself because I wanted to stop buying fast fashion. And so then I started finding these companies, most of them being LA based, that were inspired by like these vintage companies or brands. And so they became kind of my target market, like their clientele became my target when I started advertising that I was selling. So now here I am in like Long Sault, Ontario, shipping out to like California people like regularly, and it's so funny to me that I'm like pumping this stuff out there, but they're very like aware, I guess, of the problem out there and willing to kind of do something and kind of pay the extra dollar to kind of buy ethical rather than fast fashion.
So fast fashion is a term I'm not really familiar with, but I suspect you're talking about the type of Indian or Chinese sweatshop pumping out stuff,
yeah,
basically holding people hostage.
Exactly. It's such a problem, and like people don't really get it. It's like, and because of this fast fashion industry, like it's created this unawareness in people where they don't even understand what the real value of clothing is. And so yeah, in these sweatshop factories, essentially you've got, you know, underage people working for super long hours, getting paid God knows what for a
working
garment.
in buildings that collapse.
Exactly. And like at the end of the day, I do the work. I make a garment. I know how many hours it takes to put into it, and that's how I price, you know. And
yeah.
So if you're going to Walmart and buying a garment for $20, well, how much is the worker getting paid? You know, they're definitely not getting paid what they're deserving. And it's creating this problem where when you present people with something that's handcrafted and handmade and you're giving a price which is legitimate based on the work you put into it, people can't wrap their head around that because they're so used to buying something that's made it, and they don't even understand behind it, like how that price came to be that, you know, or what they're buying into. They just know like, well, there's such a massive difference between something I'm buying fast fashion versus handmade. Yeah. And it's to close that gap and to bring like awareness to people. That's my biggest goal right now, I would say.
Well, hopefully we can do something towards that goal here. You mentioned LA, you mentioned Laval. How did you end up in Long Sault?
Oh boy. Well, from California, that wasn't a pretty story with my dad, so we'll just leave it at that. But okay. I ended up my mom was still living in Quebec with my brother, and my two sisters and I moved out to LA when my parents separated with my dad. And when it came time for us to move back to Canada, my mom had remarried my stepdad, who was from the Cornwall area.
Right.
So I moved from LA to Cornwall. Never even heard of Cornwall. Like that was a shock back in 1998. Like that was a shock. So I ended up there, and I moved out to Long Sault like when I had my own family and my own kids, and I love it here. Like it's
a beautiful home.
It is. Thank you.
I lived around the corner.
Yeah.
For 10, 12 years. All right, so our next step really is to go through your work and for you to highlight some of the things you think are exceptional about it. So I'm going to turn off the camera and we'll take it off the stand and we'll go do that. All right, welcome back with Farrah. Farrah is going to show us some of the fantastic creations she has on hand. As I understand it, this is stuff that you've created for yourself.
Yeah, so this is my own personal collection, if you will. I just grabbed a couple of the things that I make for my own self, because as I said, right now my focus is doing custom garments, so I make them and I ship them out. So
right.
Yeah.
Nice to get paid.
Yeah. But I'll show you kind of like what everything starts from. So when I get an order from somebody, the very first thing I do is I get their measurements, and from that I make their own pattern. So I've been doing this for so long, I know the right way to make a pattern. This is not the right way to make a pattern, but this is the way that works for me. You know what I mean? So in that sense, it is the right way.
If you're making a pattern for someone from California, are you just giving them instructions on what measurements you need?
So for a basic style, like let's say a style like this that I'm wearing, I would need the customer's bust, their waist, and their arm circumference of like around this area. It's elasticized, so it's super forgiving, so it's easy in that sense to kind of do it virtually. I also would need their height, so I know like how long to make it.
The length on this, I'm just going to capture it.
Yeah, I'm tall, and
absolutely
that's like
perfect.
I'm about 5'9", and my daughters are really tall too. And that's like a big pet peeve for me, is that like I buy a dress, I think it's full length, and it's not really full length. So I like to make my own clothes and make them long. But if it was like, let's say a garment that I was making like this for a customer and there's a zipper in the back, well then I obviously need more measurements. So when I get an order from a customer, I really communicate with them a lot, and I tell them that, you know, I get their base measurements, and when I'm making the pattern, I really message back and forth, okay, like the dart placement, like on your waist, like give me the inches in of where it would be, whatnot, like how high up on the neck do you want it, what's your neck circumference. People are pretty good with a measuring tape. If you tell them exactly where to measure, like they're pretty good for that. So
are they picking something from something that they've seen that you've already done, or is it, you know, I need something for a frou-frou ball? And
most often they're sending me pictures of something they've like seen from somewhere else, you know,
right.
and or there are a few times where I've had like hand-drawn pictures from customers. The funny thing is that people don't realize like nothing is original anymore within reason. You know, like fashion has been around for thousands of years, and every design has been made. Yeah, like every design has been made, and at some point, you know, I can take this dress and I could raise the neckline, raise the hemline, like, you know, raise the waist.
Right, but
like,
materials do change.
Yeah.
And the machines that you're using do change.
Exactly. But as far as like pattern wise, what I'm trying to get at is like, if I have I have an abundance of patterns, at that point I can pretty much alter any pattern to kind of make it to whatever anybody wants. So if they're sending me a picture of what they want, I can still accommodate to them based on that mentality, you know what I mean? So yeah, everybody's personal garment starts out with a pattern, and I'll just show you, for example, this, you know, this is a back pattern for a dress, which is actually happens to be this dress. So that's perfect. I didn't plan that, but I picked it perfectly.
So, okay, the pattern, it allows for seams and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'll show you. This one's a little bit different because this dress, I called it my Pubushka dress. Pubushka. You know, like those dolls, those nesting dolls?
Yes,
like,
okay.
Yeah, so if you look carefully, you'll see that like each different print, it's actually like a different pattern. So there's all different seams in here, you know, so each piece needs its own pattern, like for each section.
Right.
So the same for here, this chunk in here would be a pattern, this back would be a pattern, the sleeves, the cuff, everything, you know. So the way I do that is, this is obviously the sleeve, you know, and I have it marked where I understand what it is somebody else trying to look. And this is my challenge for trying to hire somebody to help me, is like nobody does it the same. You know what I mean? I've been working for myself for so long, like doing things my own way for so long.
I wrote software that nobody else could possibly ever use, so I understand what you're saying.
That's the problem, right? You know the right way to do it, but then you know your shortcuts, so you do your shortcuts because it's a shortcut, right? So, for example, that pattern there. The front is this pattern here,
right,
or this piece here, you know. So I don't know how to explain it. Essentially, it's just all a giant puzzle. Like, that's what clothing, like, that's what sewing is, and that's kind of what excites me about it. Is like deciphering, like taking a garment and kind of making it backwards in your head.
The reverse engineering.
Yeah, exactly. That's strangely the part that makes me the most excited about clothing or sewing. One thing too that I am really proud about, and that I find is unique about my clothing, is that I French seam everything. So if you look at your store-bought clothes and you turn them on the inside, they're all overlocked or serged. And this was developed initially, I suppose, because it's faster. And so in the fast fashion industry, you know, the sweatshop factories where people are plowing away on sewing machines, like, right, they need to sew fast, they need to produce fast. So they sew on overlock machines, which sew it and cut it at the same time. And it gives this ugly look on the inside where there's these loose threads, and it's just not appealing to look at.
But it's fast to manufacture.
Exactly. Well, all of my garments are French seamed on the inside, so that essentially means I'm sewing each seam twice. So there's no loose threads at all. Like, everything is perfectly finished on the inside, and everything I make is done in that way. So it takes twice as long to sew, but it's beautiful and it's stronger, in my opinion, because, you know, you've got not one but two seams, and there's literally no loose threads. So that's kind of like my thing that I advertise now, is like, go ahead, turn your clothes inside out. Like, are they as beautiful on the inside like as they are on the out?
That's very clever.
Mine are, you know. But I don't just do dresses, you know, I do vests as well. I do leatherware. This vest was completely done, finished off by hand. Like, I did some hand buttonholes. I was really into like Victorian and Edwardian things at that time when I did it. So I was kind of trying to just push myself and see if I could do it in the Victorian way. It's hard.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
My grandfather, his family was tailors coming over from Poland or Russia, I forget which. And he had the most incredible stitch. I used to watch him and I was spellbound. He ran a furniture store.
Wow.
But he would fix his own clothes.
Yeah.
And the stitching by hand was so precise, it looked like a machine had done it.
Yeah.
It is a huge skill.
That's amazing. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not like that great with it, but it's something I like to do when I have time. Over the past summer, I was dealing with a lot of health issues, and I couldn't really sew at the sewing machine. I couldn't push like the pedal with my foot. I had like this crazy neurological thing that happened. I couldn't walk for months. And so I was just sitting all the time. And at the time I started doing a lot of like handwork. Like, I did this jacket at the time, and it's velvet, so it's tricky, you know, you see stitches with velvet, but I did like, I wanted it to have that handmade kind of very like Victorian look to it, but yeah, it's not that pretty though, so don't get it that close because it's not that nice. But it, you know, anyways, yeah, don't get that.
Okay.
So that one, that's not great. But I started doing like embroidery as well. Like, at that point, you know,
really?
I don't have any embroidery stuff out. This is a jacket that I did when I was actually in fashion design school, and this is all yarn that I wove through the weave of the dress, or sorry, the jacket. I could not fit this on if you paid me right now. I was really tiny back then. But it's like
I could use it as a glove.
It's a super 60s like swing coat kind of, and
it's
so
awesome.
I used to. When I have time, I like to experiment with textiles and stuff like that more, you know, when I have time. But right now, the thing that's kind of like the biggest seller are these styles. Like, this is kind of like my princess dress, and it's all like elasticized and super romantic looking. Like, I just love beautiful clothes. I love feeling like I'm in a fairy tale every day. And like, I think the biggest misconception is that people have about dressing up is that it's uncomfortable. But it's actually not. Like, I'm uncomfortable when I wear pants. Like, I have fibromyalgia, like you would never guess, but I do. And so restrictive things and things that like when my body's uncomfortable, like it's the worst. And wearing a dress is just super comfortable, and you can still do everything in it, you know?
Yeah, I'm wearing overalls, but if I could get away with wearing a dress, I probably would.
Yeah. So
But I'm wearing these for comfort.
Exactly. But I don't know. I love things that are not the ordinary, you know? Like, this is like a beautiful wrap dress. And
It is.
And,
I love
and
the fabric.
Print is just, yeah, as soon as I saw the print, I was like, okay, I'm keeping that one for myself. And I love making people feel beautiful. Like, that's been like the most, I think, rewarding thing. Like, now that I've been, you know, selling a lot, like, to other people, when they send me back the pictures of them wearing it and the smile on their face and how happy they are. Like, one girl in California, I made 2 custom dresses for her, and she told me, she was like, I literally am gonna cry, and she was like, you don't know what this means to me, and she was like, I feel so beautiful. Like, it's been such a boost, and like, to be able to do that for somebody and to be able to do that virtually is pretty amazing. Like, it feels pretty good, you know.
Reach out anywhere in the world and make somebody's day. That's pretty hard not to take.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
What else would you like to show us?
Well, I don't know. Like, because these are mine, so like I should have ironed them, but I didn't. I'll show,
Yes.
like, yeah.
Next time I will remind you to iron all your stuff before I go.
Sorry. So this is actually made from a vintage fabric that I found at a thrift store, and I really love doing that sometimes too. I don't know if it was a sheet or what it was, but as soon as I saw it, it just had like prairie dress vibes to it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna totally go with the whole like Laura Ashley thing, and my thing is that a lot of dresses don't have pockets, and I hate that. So I have like a point of putting pockets on stuff, and if people want them, I definitely will do it for them. And so, yeah, I like to just make unique pieces that you really don't find anymore, and especially not around here. I don't know what else you want me to show. I do coats too, so yeah. Here's a wool
I just
jacket.
want to give people a broad indication of the kind of things that you do and the kind of techniques that you use.
Yeah, well, so yeah, like I said, no matter what, they're always French themed, and I just really like to put attention on like the inside and making sure that it's as beautiful as possible, like all around, because there's nothing grosser to me than like a store-bought item that is just loose threads all on the inside and like weak seams and whatnot. I don't know. Yeah. Here's another. So I call this my dimanche dress because it's like super comfortable. It's like something you just want to laze around in on the weekend. It's beautiful, but it's kind of like an elevated muumuu, if you will. You know what I mean? Like,
I had muumuu vibes when you first pulled it out.
yeah, but you still feel elegant and you still feel beautiful in it. You can dress it up.
Yeah, I love the way it drapes even not on you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my thing is like, I won't sell something that I don't want to wear myself. You know, if I don't feel beautiful in it and if I don't think it's beautiful, then I don't want to, sell it. But I'll grab something and I'll show you. I'll bring it over here if you want.
No, it's okay. It's probably time to move on to the next segment.
Okay, because this, I was going to say, like, this is for a customer.
Oh.
And she has different kind of body issues that she's concerned about. So she's really, really short in the top half, but very large in the chest. So this was based off of a model of a dress that she bought. And even in the size extra, extra small, it didn't fit her because it was too long in the shoulders. So I didn't trim anything yet. It's not quite done.
Oh, you said it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example of how I can customize to any measurements that you need, because I literally took off like 4 inches of what the regular pattern would be to accommodate for her specific size. So that's really what I focus on now with like the custom orders, you know.
Can you I'm not sure
Get rid of that.
because I was shooting the floor.
Okay.
Can you tell us how we can get a hold of you if we want to take advantage of your design expertise?
So right now I'm doing it basically just through social media. So through Facebook, Instagram, Messenger. I have a Facebook page, Belle Penny. It's BellePenny. And yeah.
Because it's haute couture.
Well, it's pretty much a mashup of my daughter's middle names. My daughter Odyssey, her middle name is Bella, and my daughter Piper, her middle name is Penelope. So it's just both of their middle names kind of shortened and put together. So
That's lovely. You mentioned a website.
yeah, well, I actually don't have my website anymore. Now
Oh.
that I started doing custom, it's hard to advertise on a website for custom when you don't have a picture to show, because
Right.
everything is custom. But I have my Facebook page and my Instagram, and you can like my Facebook page and then just contact me directly through there. My biggest thing is that because I'm like a one-man show, I have to monitor like my orders and make sure that I'm not taking on too much at a time. Like
Right.
when I start to get to about like 25 in the queue, then I cap it off.
25 in the queue. Oh, that must be so delightful.
Yeah, that's a lot. Like,
It's a lot, but
that's
still,
a lot. Each dress
it's a lot of
takes
comfort to know what you're going to be doing for the next 6 months.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I work pretty fast, but I still don't, like, I try to aim at getting them out in 2 to 3 weeks per customer. When I get to like 25 now, it's like 4 weeks. That's not a long time to wait for a custom dress, but it makes me a little panicky. So I closed off now for like about 2 weeks, and I'll open back up for new orders soon. So it
Cool.
just goes in like flows, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your equipment? I see a
Yeah.
pair of scissors that you definitely shouldn't run with.
Yeah, so these are, I guess I'm old school because definitely these are not the type of scissors you're going to find when you go to like your local Fabricville, I like to deal with like a local fabric company fabric store in town. These were the type of scissors my dad always used. These were the type of scissors that I grew up like around, and I just hate new things. I mean, I know I'm sitting here sewing on my new machine, but it's on my
Let's
grandma's
look at
old
this.
machine. And
Is there another machine underneath
there
that that's
is,
manual?
and there's a machine here, and there's machines there, and I've got an old hand crank machine. I should have dug that out.
This is a foot pedal.
Yeah, it is. This machine I got in the summer when I couldn't sew, when I was going through like neurological issues, and I actually made a coat on it, and I sold the coat on it, sold the coat and
Oh, it's
advertised that it was made on like a hand crank machine. So
That is definitely old school.
yeah, and I really like, this is what you get with slow fashion, you don't get that with fast fashion.
I'm going to picture that.
Maybe I should take those ugly needles off. No.
It's okay. It's all part of the process.
So yeah, I actually made a quilt coat on that this
Wow.
summer, and I advertised that it was made with that. I made a little short video, and yeah, but pretty much literally just a sewing machine and
Some space.
and some space. Yeah, and as you can see, I don't have a ton of space, but I make it work. In every like nook and cranny, like stuff is hidden. I have like fabric everywhere. You do with what you can. This is when I go to make my patterns, this is kind of what I start out with. I grab my little thing. It's got my pencil in it. It's got my tracing wheel. And my weights, which are candle holders, but I use it to weigh down, the fabric, and
Right.
my rulers. But do you need all of this to sew? Like, absolutely not. You don't need a lot. It's mostly about the skill and like, I had somebody ask me a while ago, they were like wanting to start sewing and they wanted advice on a machine, and I told them my best advice would be like to go to the thrift store or like, somewhere like that and buy an old machine that just sews straight and reverses. You don't need like all those fancy things, like all those fancy settings on my machines. I never use them. When I do buttonholes, I have an old vintage Singer buttonhole attachment that I just attach to my machine. Old is just better in my opinion. I don't know. It just is made to last, and it is made to do things like simply and don't overcomplicate things. Like, I don't know. That's my opinion. So other people would say differently.
You're allowed.
I guess.
Yeah, I've seen the embroidery type machines where you can set them up to do patterns that you create on the computer, and they
Yeah.
all seem very complicated, and they seem to spend a lot of time fixing broken threads and
Yeah, and I
setting
don't
stuff
like
up
the way it looks either. Like, I'll show you like some hand embroidery stuff I was working on in the summer. This one's, oh no, did I sell the other one? Oh shoot, did I? Okay, sorry, you're not videotaping this now, are you?
Okay.
Can you give me 2 seconds? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
It's okay.
Working back. Yeah, so this is all hand embroidered little lavenders that I did. To me, this is so much more beautiful than a perfectly embroidered thing from a machine that was done by like a computer, you know.
They're very sweet. Everything
is hand done, and you can see all the like hand stitches on the inside, and everything is like.
But it must take a huge amount of time.
It does. It took a huge amount of time. So I do them when I feel like it, or when I have like a flare up, you know, like a fibro flare up, and I'm really sore, and sitting at the machine is going to be too much. Then I'll, you know, watch a movie or something and do that. But yeah.
All right. So, is there anything that you feel the audience absolutely needs to know before we say goodbye?
I think my biggest thing would be to be conscious about like what you're buying and like where you're getting it from. Like, I know not everybody can afford a dress from me, and that's fine. I get it. Like, but just being more conscious about like what you're consuming, and if you can't afford to have something like handmade and you can't afford to buy something from all the other like ethical companies out there, think more about maybe switching to buying things from thrift stores or used, or when you do buy something, make sure you love it and you're going to keep it. Because if you buy a dress where you're spending like $300 on it, like, I don't sell things that are in fashion. Like, I don't sell things that are in style. I sell things that you intend to buy and love for like your lifetime, you know, and they're made to last for a lifetime. And it's about just not giving into that like industry that is like not paying people well, not supporting ethical things, not being good for the environment, you know. And that's really my biggest thing. Like, at the end of the day, I make beautiful clothes, but the bigger meaning behind it is trying to not use the fast fashion industry.
You ethically make beautiful clothes.
Yeah. I try, you know, when I can, I use like dead stock fabrics or fabrics that I've sourced, like I said, like used or whatnot. And when I do buy fabrics like new and I have no choice and I have to buy from like, you know, big brands, like, I try to make sure like I use everything, and I know it's not going to end up being just sitting in a thrift store somewhere, because if you're buying this garment, you're going to keep it, and
right.
That's really what it's about, right?